true. I'm an elderly person. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've supported myself by expressing I'm in my mid-70s, yet math is straightforward and unforgiving. Today is my 75th birthday celebration, and God, the years do fly. Haven't arrived for your warm words. This is not really an achievement I'm amped up for. I'm happy to, in any case, be here, obviously. However, I find I have less and less to live for as time passes. My bones throb, my children live far away, and the opposite side of my bed has been vacant for a little more than 8 months now. As a matter of fact, when I cast my vote against that goddamn Trump this November, I might not have anything to live for, by any means. So extra me your blissful birthday events and your congrats. If it's all the same to you, I'm here since I have a story for you, and it's one I've never told. I used to think I kept it inside since it was senseless, or perhaps on the grounds that no one would trust it. I found, however, that the more seasoned you develop, the seriously debilitating it becomes to mislead yourself. Truth be told, I've never recounted to anyone this story since it alarms me nearly to death. However, passing appears to be more amiable than it used to, so listen closely. It was 1950, the setting of a modest community in Maine. I was a kid of 9, somewhat little for my age, with only one companion on the planet to discuss, and his family, apparently spontaneously, chose to move 2 miles away. Being the most awful summer of my life was getting down to business. My pop wasn't anywhere near, and my mother was an errand prostitute. Kid, was I glad for myself when I thought of that one. So I wasn't well suited to stay nearby the house. With some delay, I concluded the public library was the spot to be that mid-year. The library's assortment of books, especially kids' books, was most definitely small. However, inside the walls of that parsimonious construction, I would track down no scattered errands, no pestering mother, God rest her spirit, and maybe in particular, no different kids with whom I would be supposed to relate. I was the main youngster with the sufficiently low societal position to spend his valuable long periods of opportunity scowling in the midst of the shelves, and that was okay with me. The principal half of my mid-year was significantly more repulsive than I had envisioned it would be. I would stay in bed until 10, tackle my tasks, and afterward ride my bicycle to the library. And by bicycle, I mean corroded log of poop connected to a couple of wheels. When there, I would part my time between accidentally irritating the older supporters and purposely doing as such. One lovely woman really interfered with my relentless tongue clicking to murmur a "shut the fuck up" at me whenever I first heard an adult utilize the F word. Large fucking bargain, I know. Yet in those days, it was unbelievable. The grim days went to sad weeks. I'd really started appealing to God for school to begin once more, until I found the cellar. I really, truly thought I'd meandered every last bit of that library. Yet, at some point, in the furthest corner behind the unknown dialect assortment, I coincidentally found a little wooden entryway I had never seen. That was where everything started. The entryway was austere and produced using oak that looked far more seasoned than the wall where it rested. It had a handle of dark metal that straightforwardly looked old. I could never have been shocked to learn it was created in the 17th 100 years. Engraved on the handle had all the earmarks of being a solitary impression. I had the feeling that anything laid past this entryway was taboo to me, and subsequently likely the most fascinating thing I would experience throughout the mid-year. I immediately looked around to ensure no one was watching me, then turned the weighty handle, slipped behind the entryway, and shut it. There was nothing, just murkiness. I made 2 or 3 strides and afterward halted, startled by the entirety of the shadow which encompassed me. I waved my hands before me, trying to track down a wall or a rack or anything to clutch. What I really found was undeniably more unobtrusive. A little string hanging from a higher place, however undeniably more valuable. I snatched it solidly and pulled it down. Once upon a time, heaps of lights were worked with strings, and this was one of them. My environmental factors were immediately enlightened. I was remaining on a little, dusty stage that looked like it hadn't seen life in a long while. To one side was a crooked arse twisting flight of stairs, made of wood and seeming prepared to implode all of a sudden. The bulb was the main wellspring of light in the room, and it was weak. So when I looked over the railing to see what lay beneath, the lower part of the flight of stairs broke up into the obscurity. I was starting to feel frightened. This spot, any place I was, appeared to have no business in a town library. It was like I was in something else altogether. Yet, no 9-year-old likes to let a secret go perplexing. Thinking back, I want to advise my juvenile self to pivot, return, do anything more next to diving that flight of stairs. You'll be saved a ton of restless evenings, I'd say. In any case, obviously, I didn't have the foggiest idea about that then, at that point, and I might not have listened regardless of whether I had. So rather than turning around, I took a full breath, grasped the railing, and glared steadfastly forward as I started my plunge. The wood on the railing was dry and covered with splinters. I quickly let go, holding my hands out for balance as I painstakingly navigated the flight of stairs. It was, or if nothing else appeared, extremely lengthy, and with just the faint sparkle from the string bulb far above me, my heart beat barbarously in the dimness. Indeed, even children can detect when there's something wrong with something. I think they simply don't necessarily, in every case, care a lot. When my feet arrived at the concrete floor at the base, the light from the bulb above was practically a memory. Be that as it may, there was another light source, and God, I will always remember it. Straightforwardly before me was an entryway, gigantic and a profound shade of red. The light was fighting against imminent loss, the entryway, and it sparkled out in slight lines from every one of the 4 sides. A vile, faintly gleaming square shape. For the subsequent time, I took a full breath and passed through an entryway I shouldn't have. Rather than the wet room I entered from, the room behind the entryway was blinding. At the point when my eyes changed, what I saw almost blew my mind. It was a library, the absolute best library possible. I expanded in wonder as I ventured, respectfully, further into the room. It was lovely. It was more modest than the library above, a lot more modest, yet it was, by all accounts, nearly custom for me. The racks were loaded with brilliantly shaded titles. The 2 easy chairs in the room were dazzlingly agreeable, and the smell, my God, the smell was absolutely fantastic. Kind of a combination of citrus and pine. I essentially can't do it with words. So, all to say the least, I've smelled nothing better. Not in my 75 years. What was this room? Why had I never known about it? For what reason was no other person here? Those were the inquiries I ought to have been posing. In any case, I was inebriated as I looked around at every one of the books and lounged in the smell of heaven. I could shape one idea. I won't ever be exhausted from now on. In truth, fatigue just stowed away from me for a very long time. It was on my 12th birthday, a long time back, right up till now, that everything changed. Before that day, I visited my storm cellar safe haven as frequently as I could, normally a few times each week. I never saw one more soul down there, yet peculiarly stayed liberated from doubt. I never eliminated a book from that room. However, I would rather get a specific volume any place I had quit perusing during my past visit. I sat consistently in a similar profound purple easy chair and continuously leaving its twin desolate and straightforwardly opposite myself. That easy chair was mine. The other was, all things considered. I guess I could never have enunciated it, then obviously superior to. I can now, yet. It wasn't mine, without a doubt. On my 12th birthday, I showed up later than expected. My mother had several schoolmates and a few cousins over to our home to commend, a signal which I saw as more monotonous than contacting. Truly, I simply needed to spend my birthday sitting and perusing and smelling heaven. Ultimately, our visitors returned home, and I came to the library around 15 minutes prior to shutting time. That didn't make any difference. The specialists never checked down there before they secured. I was allowed to remain as late as I wished. This specific evening, I was gobbling up the last parts of a legendary experience. Knights, swords, winged serpents, and such. I didn't smell it until I read the last words and shut the book. The once stunning smell of that room had gone bad. I sat briefly, disrupted. Unbiasedly, I could perceive that the smell was really equivalent to it had been previously, that combination of citrus and pine. I just saw it in an unexpected way, and I could have done without it any longer. It was the nasal form of an optical deception. You know, the one that appears as though a young lady looking in reverse. However, out of nowhere, you see that it's actually an elderly person pointing toward you. You can't unsee that, and I couldn't unsmell this. The spell was broken. The scent likewise appeared. Interestingly, to be coming from someplace explicitly. With a considerable lot of fear, I followed around the room, sniffing the air like a frenzied canine until I came to a rack close to the back. The rack was entirely ordinary, except for one title, an enormous, leather-bound front of strong blurred maroon with one striking dark impression at the highest point of the spine. This was the wellspring of the smell. I opened the title page and saw one sentence scribbled perfectly in dark red ink on the principal page. Rest your distresses down, and companion, and leave them where they lie. I gazed at this sentence, entranced, as I withdrew to my seat. I turned a page. Clear. The smell became more grounded. Another page. Clear. And the smell developed even further. I halted briefly, stifled a gag, and strolled. Then, as I approached the rockers, I turned one last page, and there, in a similar evil print, was the last thing I expected to see. My own name. I dropped the book. I started to run toward the entryway, yet as I moved my look forward, my heart jumped to my throat, and I halted abruptly. The unfilled seat wasn't vacant any longer. A matured man in a suit sat before me. One leg got over the other, considering me with penetrating dim eyes and a light sneer. This was really quite a lot. I tumbled to my knees and removed the items in my stomach onto the floor covering. I cleaned my mouth, gazing at my regurgitation, when I heard the man let out a laugh. I gazed at him disbelievingly. "Who are you?" I asked, an alarm in my voice. The man jumped to his feet, snatched me delicately by the shoulders, and aided me to my seat. He sat, by and by, on his own. I dread that we started off on a bad foot, he expressed, looking at the heap of debilitates on the rug. The smell. It takes some getting acclimated to. Who are you? I rehashed it. This evening, you won't realize the difficulty like you've known before, he said. I come as a companion, offering you shelter from it, and from any remaining tempests which lie ahead. I needed just to leave at that point. However, I stayed situated. I asked him what he was referring to. Your mom is dead. My kid, by her own hand, in her kitchen. The scene is grim. I can't help but confess, he said in tragic tones. Yet was there a lively glimmer in his eye? Without a doubt, you wish to stay away from this way. I can show you a more secure one. My blood ran cold at the revulsions this man discussed. Yet I didn't trust him. What is it that you need with me? I requested, attempting to sound bolder than I felt. He giggled, an old, rough cry that appeared to shake him to his bones. Only your companionship. Dear kid, he said. Then, at that point, detecting I found his response lacking, he explained, I believe that you should come on an excursion with me. My work is respectable, and you will make a fine disciple. Also, perhaps, when I'm finished, he moaned sluggishly, running his hard fingers through his meager white hair. Perhaps then, my work can be yours. I stood up, rearranging toward the entryway, yet never breaking his look. You're insane, I told him. My mother isn't dead. She's not. See with your own eyes. Assuming that you should, he expressed, signaling toward the entryway. I tossed him a disdainful glare and darted for the exit. As my hand shut around the handle, he said my name delicately. Notwithstanding myself, I pivoted. Your street will not be simple. Companion, on the off chance that it at any point turns out to be a lot for you, and I mean ever, he expressed, stopping to clear his hand over the room. You know where to track me down. I hammered the entryway behind me and took the dilapidated steps too all at once. I left the library, climbed onto my bicycle, and got a move on home. The front entryway was totally open. I got off, leaving my bicycle in a stack on the ground, and moved toward the house warily. The elderly person was lying. He probably was. All things considered, tears started to sting my eyes. Heart beating, I ventured inside and required my mom. I heard no response, so I transformed into the kitchen. Right up to the present day, I don't have the foggiest idea why she made it happen. I've lived in that humble community in Maine my whole life, despite the fact that I've kept for the most part clear of the public library. Once, in my late 20s, I brought the mental fortitude to step inside. Life was great around then, and my trepidation had started to transform into inactive interest. Where the way to my storm cellar, safe haven once stood, was just a clear wall. I asked the curator what had happened to that storm cellar. However, in my heart, I knew the response. There was no cellar, she said. There had never been a cellar. As a matter of fact, in the event that she had her realities accurately, city drafting mandates denied a storm cellar nearby. I've been spooky because of that wonderful smell, that noxious mix of citrus and pine, since some time in the past. At the point when I saw my mom in the kitchen that day, fell in her very own pool of blood. I smelled it. At the point when a man professing to be my dad thumped on my school loft entryway, implored me for cash, and beat me to a pulp. When I declined, I smelled it. At the point when my better half lost our subsequent youngster, I smelled it. And again, when she prematurely delivered our fourth. At the point when our most established child got in the driver's seat of the family Buick, totally shit-faced, and wrecked his sweetheart. I smelled it. I started to smell it occasionally, as my better half ended up being debilitated. She passed on before the end of last year, and presently, I'm distant from everyone else without precedent for the greater part of 100 years. Presently, I smell it consistently, and it seems like a greeting. A couple of months prior, I returned to the library and the little oak entryway with the old handle was there, right where it used to be. My night walk has brought me past that library consistently since, yet I haven't headed inside. Perhaps this evening I will. I'm terrified to kick the bucket. Indeed, yet of late, I'm significantly more scared to continue to live. The elderly person was correct. My street hasn't been simple, and I question if it will get any more straightforward. Rest your distresses down, companion, and leave them where they lie. He guaranteed alleviation, a shelter, he said. Could it be said that he was correct about that as well? There's just a single method for finding out. All things considered, I actually know where to track him down.